What's up, guys? Carolina Jackpot time checking in. It is late on Friday evening, and it's time for part 2 of the picks and predictions for week number 11 of the college football season. Picking 20 more games here. Picked 20 the other day and getting these picks in late, but here we go. Started off this week, already started off 0-2. Last night's games didn't go as according to plan. However, the one that they're playing tonight that I have in here, UNLV and BYU, looks to be tied up right now. So we'll see how that goes. All right, guys, Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a 2-point favorite at home against Kentucky Wildcats, who are actually 6-3. Vanderbilt is 4-5 right now. Vanderbilt's covered the spread against Kentucky 4 of the last 5 years they've played. They also have won the last 3 games in a row in Nashville. History says that the Commodores will cover the spread here. So I'm going to take the points and Vanderbilt. I just think that Vanderbilt's played tougher competition so far. Alabama, of course, the Kansas State. Vanderbilt's taken on Georgia already. Of course, Kentucky will take on Georgia, but have not as yet. I think Vanderbilt's more battle-tested than Kentucky is. I still don't think Kentucky is that good of a team, and take Commodores and the points at home. Georgia State on the road at Texas State. They're 6.5-point underdogs to, or no, they're favored on the road against Texas State. Just looking at this one, Georgia State is better versus common opponents this year. Also, with a win, they can get bowl eligible in Sean Elliott's first year. Look for the Panthers to cover the spread there against the Texas State Bobcats. You know, so I'm having to kind of pick some lower end games here to fill out that 40, but that's all fun and good. Troy on the road at Coastal Carolina. I am going to take Coastal Carolina to cover that 17-point spread. I don't think they're going to win that game, but I think they'll keep it a little closer than that. They've been playing pretty well lately. So last week, a 1-point loss on the road at SEC Arkansas. Yeah, I know Arkansas is probably the worst team in the SEC, all things considered, but you know, it's still a team that's in their second year of FBS competition, taking that game that close, and they led most of that game as well. I think they're going to cover the spread at home against Troy. It's not as strong as what they have been in some of the years past, so look for that one to be closer than that. UTEP at North Texas. We're going to take North Texas and the 22.5 points. The Mean Green can score. They really can. UTEP is just a terrible team. They're 0-9, I believe, and to make it 0-10 on Saturday. North Texas is going to roll in this one. Washington State at Utah. You know, Washington State's still dangerous. They're an 8-2 team right now. They had some aspirations of winning the Pac-12, college football playoffs, and all that kind of went down the drain when they got bombarded by Cal a few weeks ago. But they're still a dangerous team. Utah's kind of up and down. They got a couple of impressive wins, and then they got a couple of head-scratching losses in there. You just don't know what you're going to get with them. Washington State's a 1-point favorite on the road there. Look for them to cover that spread against the Utah Utes. Kansas on the road at Texas. 33.5-point favorites. The Texas Longhorns are. You know, last year this was an overtime game. Texas is not a high-scoring team at all by any stretch of the imagination. Looking at the rest of the ones in the Big 12 over there. Last week, Kansas gave Baylor their first conference win. You know, by it was like a 30-point win. So I think they're going to look to bounce back from that. I think Texas is going to win this game. I think they're going to win it handily. But that's an awful lot of points to cover, and they just don't beat teams like that. I don't think they're going to cover that spread. Look for the Jayhawks in that one. Alabama on the road at Mississippi State, 13.5-point favorite on the road in Starkville. That whole half point is going to be important right there. I think Alabama is going to win this game by 14 points. I think that's what's going to happen. That's just a smart pick there. They're number 2 right now in the playoff rankings. It could actually turn out to be more than a 14-point win for them. They're looking to make a statement, I believe. And they could certainly do that if they go out and have an impressive win against Mississippi State. You're looking at the Auburn-Georgia game, which everybody thinks is going to be a really close one. So, if they play a real close game and Georgia wins by, a point or 2, and Alabama goes on the road and crushes Mississippi State by 30, they could jump Georgia into that number 1 spot. So this is a pivotal game. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think this one will be closer than the Crimson Tide would like it to be. However, I do think they will win in Starkville. Just too much Tide on this night. Tulane on the road at East Carolina. East Carolina is a 5.5-point underdog at home. ECU's 2-7, Tulane's 3-6. But let's just be real. Tulane's a much better football team than East Carolina is. 5.5 is not a lot of points, especially the way these teams can light up the scoreboard. Let's pick Tulane in that one to cover the spread. ECU has just given up a ton of points this year. What a program in decline that one is. Purdue on the road at Northwestern, 4.5-point favorites at home. Northwestern Wildcats is a better team than people realize. Like the overtime win against Michigan State. This is actually the first November night game in Northwestern football history. It's an interesting factoid there. And I think they're going to win the first November night game in November in Northwestern. It's a lot of ends. Northwestern football history against Purdue. Purdue, I had high hopes for them. After that, won a couple games there, and then a close loss on the road at Wisconsin. But then the next week they came back. They disappointed me. They lost to Rutgers on the road. I said, all right, well, they'll come back next week. They'll cover the spread against Nebraska at home. They didn't do that either. I'm not that big of a believer in them anymore. I still think they're a year or two away from contending for anything significant. So take Northwestern into points in this game at home easily. UAB on the road at UT San Antonio. UTSA is 8-point favorites at home against UAB. I really don't understand this one. UAB's had some impressive wins so far in Conference USA this year. Win over Louisiana Tech. Had like a 30-12 win over Southern Miss. And this is in their first season back after not playing a game since 2014. I'll look for them to cover the spread at UT San Antonio and probably win that game. Tennessee on the road at Missouri. This is one that's probably going to surprise a few people. 12.5-point favorites. Missouri is at home. I just think that's a lot of points. Just based off the fact of how they played against Florida last week. Florida is just an awful mess. Okay, they're an awful mess. Tennessee is too. But Tennessee's 4-5 right now. This will be their last shot at a bowl game. Or no, they've only won 4 games. This will be their last shot at a bowl game. They have to win this one, and then they got Vanderbilt. Both of those games, which are winnable next week, they're playing on the road at LSU. They're not winning that game. So they need this game if they want to go to a bowl game. And what should be, what will be, definitely, Butch Jones last year in Knoxville. I'm going to look for them to cover the spread against Missouri. But make no mistake about it, neither one of these football teams are very good. Missouri doesn't play defense. They have been playing a little bit better football as of late. But Tennessee, I don't think they're totally dead yet. They kind of woke up a little bit last week, won against Southern Miss at home. Look for them to bring a little bit more game there and keep that thing close. TCU on the road at Oklahoma, 6.5-point underdogs. If you watch any of these games here, know anything about Big 12, TCU is like the only team that plays defense out there. They have the #1 defense in the Big 12. Oklahoma 6.5-point favorites at home. I'm going to pick the Horned Frogs to cover the spread here. Normally these teams that play defense end up coming out on top of these teams with these prolific offensive. Oklahoma obviously has no defense whatsoever. Notre Dame at Miami. This would be one of the surprise picks of the week. I'm going to pick the Hurricanes to cover the spread here and win this game. I just think that Miami has more to play for here. I look for the upset. Miami's going to make Notre Dame turn the ball over. They have done that this year. They'll stop that run and attack, and I think that the Convicts are going to go on top of the Catholics this year and look for Miami. They have a lot more to prove. I mean, they're much chagrin. They've been much maligned with that undefeated season. Everybody says they haven't played anybody, they haven't beaten anybody, blah, blah, blah. They showed, last week that they do have a pulse. They blew Virginia Tech out of the water. Virginia Tech's a good football team. Notre Dame is a step above Virginia Tech. I think Miami will step above to meet the challenge. Pick the Hurricanes in this game. Upset pick. New Mexico at Texas A&M. Texas A&M 17.5-point favorites against New Mexico. I'm going to take the Aggies to cover the spread here. New Mexico has been on a tailspin. They've lost quite a few games in a row. For that to continue, Western Kentucky on the road at Marshall. 11-point underdogs. I'm looking for them to cover the spread here. They played Vanderbilt last week and actually kept that game fairly close. I think that Vanderbilt's a better team than Marshall, so we're going to look for this one to be a pretty tight game. Southern Miss on the road at Rice. They're a 10-point favorite. Rice is 1-8, with their only win being, or their closest loss actually, 6 points to FIU, who's gotten much better since then. Southern Miss is 5-4 at this point in the season. They're only a 10-point favorite on the road. I easily look for them to cover the spread there. I think you'd have to be dumber than a box of hammers to take Rice in that game. Indiana at Illinois. I went back and forth on this one. They're a 9.5-point favorite. Indiana's played a lot tougher schedule than Illinois has. They're both in a 3-6 record. Illinois is 2-7. These teams don't play each other very often. Illinois usually wins the games when they play in Champaign, but I think Indiana will cover the spread here and win this game pretty handily. They just played tougher competition, and that they're in that kind of that Eastern Division part of the Big Ten there. With Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and that Illinois is over on the other side with Wisconsin and Purdue. Just look for them to cover that. Texas Tech on playing Baylor in Dallas. They're 9-point favorites. We'll look for them to cover this spread here. Baylor got their first win of the year last week, and it was against Kansas, who we all know is absolutely terrible. Texas Tech's kind of been on a downward spiral lately, but they still score points, and I think they can score plenty enough to beat Baylor by more than 9 points. SMU on the road against Navy, 3.5-point underdogs. I'm going to look for SMU to cover the spread here. Navy has lost 3 games in a row. They're reeling. They're really not impressive at all, especially the last game timeout. I saw them play at Temple on a Thursday night. That was just a bad loss. I'm going to take SMU and the Fighting Chad Morris here, who had a close loss last week to UCF, to cover the spread and win this game. And finally, Florida Atlantic on the road at Louisiana Tech, 4.5-point underdogs, which I can't really understand that one. Florida Atlantic's been on a roll lately. I think they're going to cover the spread here and dispatch of Louisiana Tech. That's it, guys. 40 games in the books. Picks and predictions for Week 11. Tune in next week. See how I did. Peace. I'm out. Go Gamecocks.